welcome back to our new segment. It's this week, Tuesday, Thursday, and hopefully it will expand to Monday to Friday. It's called Forum. So we're just going to share ideas, have different views, maybe get our blood rushing a bit. The idea is to have a candid conversation about what's good for us, what's good for Australia, what's good for regional, rural, and outback areas of this great country. The global crisis created by war in the Middle East has profound implications for food security in Australia as elsewhere, and governments must act urgently to ensure people have access to healthy foods, according to food policy expert Dr. Nick Rose. We did invite Dr. Rose to participate, but we didn't hear back. Maybe we'll try again next time. Hello, Dr. Rose. Now, Dr. Rose warns that food insecurity is a national security risk and makes a series of recommendations for government, including support Australian farmers to transition to climate resilient and regenerative farming, reducing dependence on large volumes of imported inputs, increase JobSeeker above the Henderson poverty line. That's a good idea. Prioritise healthy food above all. Treat market gardens and community gardens as essential infrastructure, and introduce a universal healthy school meals program. Guarantee access during times of acute shocks like right now by establishing strategic food reserves and diversifying supply chains. All good ideas. Now, most of this seems fine, so we'll speak to some experts over the next few months to learn just what it is that Australians must do to enhance our systems of food production, distribution, and consumption to ensure we don't face a growing catastrophe while we watch the decimation of our agriculture and food production systems. Now, a guest, Pennie Scott. Now, Pennie Scott is Business Development and Communications for Ori Co-op, and Michael Gooden is proprietor of Willow Wee and founder of Growers Hub. First of all, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello.
What?
Yep. First of all, I'll start with you, Pennie, if you don't mind. What's your views on that report?
Oh, I think Nick is all over it like a rash. And he's been a leader in a lot of these policy developments over many years. And he knows his stuff. It's a matter of convincing authorities to take notice. Now, in Victoria, they are light years ahead of most of the other states in terms of funding and supporting through infrastructure the establishment of lots of kitchen gardens, lots of community gardens, and therefore people have much greater access to developing knowledge about how to grow food.
What do you think, Michael? Because I see, and it's sort of a roundabout thought here, but I see government on one hand saying that we all need to eat well, and I see that they don't do a whole lot for the cost of fruit and veg, and I see that the quality of fruit and veg in many cases is not that great, and government could ensure that it is better, cheaper, and that it will help this country grow to be a healthy nation. Do you think government's doing enough?
Yeah, it's a difficult position for the government in a lot of ways. Like, ultimately, the government's not the one picking up the piece of fruit off the shelf and buying it, consuming it. I think we underestimate the power of the consumer in this situation. So, in our situation, we're involved in a local grower hub here in Wagga. It's a choice that people are making to come in and shop in that venue, and that's the power of the consumer. I see is where it's at. It's great to get the health guidelines and that type of stuff from the government, but the health guidelines aren't saying you've got to buy local. They're just saying have X amount of servings of of fruit and veg and meat and that type of stuff a week. And thankfully, those guidelines have been changed a little bit now to actually reflect what a modern diet is, not what they sort of have been for quite some time. So yeah, it's an interesting space that.
Penny, tell us what you're involved with. It's very interesting, and then I'll ask the same question for Michael.
I originally trained as a naturopath back in my breeding days of 5 boys, and I wanted to. I still don't have a nervous twitch. It's all good. And I wanted to make sure they didn't get sick. I didn't want to be one of those mothers who was always running to the doctor because they had a sniffy nose or something. So I became a naturopath. I studied that to learn about what is optimum health and what do you need to do to achieve that status so that your immune system is as strong as it possibly could be. And through studying naturopathic medicine, I learned so much and applied it. And so that has been the basis for me being an absolute advocate for food without synthetic fertilizers, toxic chemicals, or genetic modification. It's about having food available for all people without these inputs, and also to educate people that ultra high processed foods are just appalling. They minimize the capacity of our immune systems, and due to the diets in Australia, and it's interesting you raised that whole thing about health warnings and health guidelines and things. Well, follow the money. But I heard a report not long ago that more than 50% of Australia's population is diagnosed with a chronic disease. Now, for me, that to me is just appalling. And that actually limits the country's potential. But how did they get to that state? How is it that more than 50% of the population are on medications for chronic diseases? That's where I think we need to be going to find that out.
Michael, tell me about your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I agree to a certain extent with what Penny's saying. I think ultimately we got to transition our modern farming practices to have a focus on, rather than just producing quantity, but we've got to be thinking about quality as well. Certainly from a broad acre grain perspective, we grow 20, 30 million tonnes of wheat, but do we need to be growing that amount? Could we be growing less and having it higher quality? And also, how is that being used? Is it the most efficient use of that plant by then feeding it to an animal that's in confinement? Like, should we be just doing that out on grass? I think the quality of food's really important. And if you the thing that's really exciting with some of the areas that we're working in is if you change your production system a bit, you improve the health of the soil that you're farming, and then you're improving the quality of the produce that's coming off that, and then that's flowing then into the unintended impact out of that, which is a real benefit, is improving the health system as well. So there's these win-win-wins, in the environment, the profitability of the farmers that are doing it, and the health of the produce coming off it. So it's if we made some changes to it, we could have a really great outcome. But it's sort of helped back to my first point. I think we don't want to underestimate the importance of the consumer making those decisions about, when they're deciding where they're going to get their produce from. They're in a really powerful position.
It's very interesting. I think we have at the moment fruit and veg is enormously expensive, and you look at what's happening in the supermarkets, and then look what's happening in the paddock. It's going to go up and up and up. How do we whether it's at a market or whether it's in a supermarket, how do we maintain some sort of semblance of normality when it comes to the price? Because if it goes up, which it will, and if the current situation with Australia going through just tottering on a recession, and with the cost of fuel and stuff, it's going to place a lot of pressure on families, isn't it, Penny? How do we keep things at a level that's acceptable to all?
Well, you've got so many different groups of people, as when we say cost of living crisis, Well, it's different for a 17-year-old than a 25-year-old, than a 37-year-old with three kids, or somebody who's 52 and then somebody who's retired. So the food is definitely a critical component of all that. However, when you look statistically and historically, food has never been cheaper than it is now for the past 10 years. And that's because of globalization. It's because of cheap fossil fuel. And also because the major food distributors, such as supermarkets, do not add on their externalities. And what I mean by that is they do not pay for pollution. And so the prices that you find in supermarkets are abnormally subsidized, or they're not paying the full cost of what it takes to produce food. I think Mike's a really good one to answer this because he's at the Growers Hub every week. And Mike, Michael, you can talk about what the prices are there and how many people are coming to buy those beautiful products.
Michael.
Yeah, well, I mean, from our own perspective, we're selling grass-fed beef at the market, and we're pretty cost competitive with what you would buy beef from at a local supermarket and or butcher. In our situation, we're that animal's being born and raised on our property. We're taking it down, being slaughtered, and coming back and then selling it. So we can do that. We can be cost competitive in that situation because we're capturing the wholesale and the retail market in that space. That's probably not really practical at a real macro scale, but you could do it at a lot bigger scale than what we're operating at and still keep that genuine paddock to plate experience happening. One of the interesting things that for us, and I can only use the examples that we're exposed to, but at the moment, it's probably costing us $10 a kilo to sort of slaughter the animal, pay ourselves fair market value for the animal, slaughter it, and then getting it through to the butcher and back into the fridge in the market. We're probably talking at $15 a kilo just for whatever type of meat it is. So then when I go into a supermarket or butcher and I see sausages for $8.99 or $12 or whatever, well, you have to think, well, that can't be meat in that. It can't all be meat because there's no way that they're paying the farmer the fair market value for the animal and then paying the wages of the people that are dealing with it to get it into that state. So, it's a really interesting space, knowing what those costs are. Our high-end meat sells for far more than that, but we sell our mince and sausages for $25 a kilo. And for us, it's a real, we want good quality food to be affordable for everyone. We don't want people to be able to say, look, we can't afford to eat good quality food. The example I've been given over the years is, if you think about what would actually cost, for high quality potatoes compared to French fries at a local takeaway outlet, well, they're paying $70 a kilo, and you can buy the best quality biodynamic potato for $30 a kilo. So that is a choice that people make. Same thing for meat as well. So I think it gets down to that choice that people are making and understanding where their food's coming from.
Yeah, my wife and I we took Pennie's advice, and we had that, I have to go to Coles, I have to go, and we didn't do it. I said, no, think what Pennie would do. So we didn't even go to Woolworths or IGA. We went to the Ferry Road Market on the Gold Coast. It's only small, but I have to tell you, we compared some of the price of things there. It was a third cheaper than Coles, and the food, the meat was magnificent. That was a little bit dearer, but you knew what you were eating, and it was fantastic. We used to have, once upon a time had the most secure food systems in the world. What's going on? Why haven't we got that now, Pennie?
Let's have a look at how free trade agreements work. Let's have a look at how multinational corporations control so many of the food supply chains. And it's a very dominant And they make a lot of money out of it. And so they don't want anything to change. The power of the lobby in parliaments is huge. And we, the small scale growers, the little people in this whole food business thing, don't get a look in because the power of the lobby is so huge and it's been there for decades. So the narrative that they peddle, these lobbyists representing Cargill's, Tees, JB Swift, they're just some of the meat people. The narratives they spin to the politicians, who tend to be a little gullible, I have to say, is that to have food security, well, you need us. So we're the most efficient system on the planet, and you'll just keep supporting us. And they do that to the point where food safety rules are changed. And I have seen this, whereby a small-scale abattoir, multi-species abattoir, will have to pay the same compliance rates as an abattoir that can process 5,000 chickens in an hour, such as Steggles. It's all done by machine, whereas the hand killing and the hand eviscerating and processing of chickens, which might be 500 in a day, pays the same compliance rates as that big system. So follow the money, and that's where you'll find how a lot of the decisions are made.
Michael, because we had one of the most secure food systems in the world. We're very proud of it. Where do you see it's gone wrong?
Yeah, I mean, from a beef perspective, we export sort of 30-40% of our beef. So, like, but so our local market like that is we do certainly supply that. But in saying that, like a lot of the animals, like we would export, you know, a lot of our lower value cuts. So an animal might be processed here in Australia, you know, the eye fillet and Scotch fillet is probably sold here locally because our domestic market can afford to buy that. But a lot of our lower value cuts would be shipped off into other markets. So, you know, in some ways that's in the best interest, but the grower's probably not really seeing the reward for that. The middleman and the abattoirs themselves and the meat traders are probably picking up on a bit of that. Like, I mean, yeah, it's happened with a lot of the stuff, you know, a lot of the fuel security, the fertiliser, a lot of our machinery parts, all that stuff. You know, I used to manufacture a lot of stuff here in Australia. That's just the global world that we're living in, like that. I think, you know, if anything's good that can come out of the current situation at the moment, it is, you know, can we get back to a state that we are a bit more self-sufficient like that? You know, what do we have the desire to want to be able to do that, to be able to manufacture or refine fuel onshore and or fertiliser that we need onshore? And then, you know, can we change our production system so we're not so reliant on some of the external inputs as well?
And it's you're right. The cost to it goes up. I mean, everything goes up, just keeps going up, and it's got to stop somewhere. But on the land, how do you? This is for you, Michael. How do you feel about? I mean, is it impacting you with the fuel going like that, fertilizers going like that, and then you see government? We're going to where are we off to now? Off to probably Uranus or somewhere. To get fuel. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. Oh, we should have stored that. Oh well. And then the big hoo-ha about those 3 ships coming from the US with all the fuel. That was the stuff that we had as our backup. It's probably all gone now. So how do you feel, Michael, about this? Do you think that we sometimes get the politicians and some of the bureaucrats out on the land a bit, spend a month or 6 weeks, probably 8 weeks, might show them a little bit, and say, this is the real world, this is how it operates, because if you don't have fuel, if you don't have your fertiliser, contrary to what you might think, they don't grow the product in the supermarket. And we're not going to have it. So how do we get through, and I won't say numbskulls because I'll get into trouble, but you know, some would say that, the numbskulls. How do we get through that piece of bone that surrounds the brain that says, to point out that they need to really, really do the homework and look after the farmer, look after the country, and make sure we have enough fuel, make sure we have fertiliser at a good price and fuel at a good price. Because otherwise, when they pop into the supermarket, they'll be shocked because they won't see anything there.
Well, I think there's two parts to it, and without scaremongering, I think it actually would be good to a certain extent if there was a few bare shelves here and there to actually wake up some of the shortcomings of our current supply chains. And no doubt, like there is going to be an impact with some of the fuel, probably more so the urea shortages, I think. But I think taking a step back and actually looking at your whole production system and saying, like, what can we do in our production system to reduce the externalities? Like, how much diesel do we need to be using? How much synthetic fertilisers do we need to be using? Can we be using them in a more efficient way? So, in our own business, we are all beef cattle. We don't use a lot of fuel as such on farm. We're not, sowing crops or harvesting crops and cutting hay, all that type of stuff. We sort of say our cattle are solar cattle rather than diesel cattle. But we still do need a certain amount of diesel, don't get me wrong, to get them to and from abattoirs and to and from the market, that type of stuff. The beef industry uses a reasonable amount of diesel, not probably the same amount per hectare that the cropping guys would. But then certainly the fertiliser inputs as well. We've made some significant changes to the way we manage our land to reduce our reliance on synthetic inputs. We use a little bit here and there, but certainly not the amounts, again, that the same as the cropping guys would be using. And that's a choice that we've made as a business. What can we control, and then what is external to us. And so we've been, we can't control the weather, so I don't spend any time worrying about it. We can't control what the markets are doing, so we try and exclude ourselves as much from that market. I can control the price I put on the piece of meat that I sell at the growers hub, so we can sell into that market. We've also got a cattle stud. I can control the price that I can sell our bulls for within reason, so we can do that. It's about control the controllables in that situation. And we're just any other farmer like anyone else, and over the last sort of 15 years have made steps towards being more in control of our own business than not. So I can't see why a lot of other people couldn't make steps in that direction. I think I'd like to think that this is a bit of a wake-up call, but it was only 21 or 22 the last time fertiliser went through the roof that my phone started ringing and saying, "Oh, look, how do we reduce our reliance on MAP or urea?" And the best way to do that is to start 5 years ago and start weaning yourself off some of those products. Like if you just try and go cold turkey about it, you'll actually end up doing more damage, and you sort of a bit of hysteria, like what happened in Sri Lanka there a few years ago, and everyone sort of says, "Oh, look, you can't go organic, you can't feed the world if you do that." But if you went about it the right way, you'd feed the world, you'd feed the world a lot better quality food, and you'd probably do it on half the cost type of stuff. So, like, there's ways to go about it, but you have to go about it the smart way rather than, just say, look, all of a sudden we don't have urea or we don't have MAP. And diesel's the big one because, our country genuinely runs on diesel. Like I live on a national highway and the trucks that are rolling along there, for some reason they think it's a great idea to grow tomatoes in South Australia and sell them into Sydney. And every 9 minutes there's a big truck that runs past out the front of our place carting these tomatoes. And like it's just madness when you think about it, but this is what we've got ourselves into.
You'd have plenty of fertiliser anyway. You just got to walk with a bucket behind your cattle.
Well, I mean, we do a little bit of external fertiliser, so I don't want to be too smug, but we really in the scheme of things, it's very little. And then that's part of the strategy is with the cell grazing, we're running animals at reasonably high density and we're getting that genuine distribution of dung out across the paddock, across the paddock all the time. We do have to, we put a little bit of phosphorus on and we put a few micro elements on, but mostly it's not large amounts in the scheme of things.
Pennie, what do you think? And would you like to have a few bucket loads of the end result on Michael's property?
Funnily enough, only last week I got a trailer load of aged cow manure from a local dairy for my garden. So I'm a great supporter of these natural fertilisers.
Plenty of it around Canberra. Yeah, but anyway.
And Sydney and Brisbane. I think every Parliament house there's plenty of it.
Dreadful. But what do you think, though? What do you think of what Michael was saying?
Oh, it's absolutely spot on. Michael's well versed in and is a great thinker about systems. And we all need to become systems thinkers and understand that everything is connected and there are ramifications. So every time we put something to eat into our mouths, the choice we make about that is having an impact somewhere. Now, it can be a positive impact or it can be a negative impact. And the more we support foods which are not being bought directly from the growers, then we're having a negative impact because we don't know how those foods have been grown. And usually the people who grow the raw commodities are at the arse end of the value chain. So they don't get the financial prosperity that all those who do the value adding up the value chain, they take control of those certain processes. Then it's those people who get the money. And you probably have heard of the example of a ton of wheat to make bread, going into flour to make bread. And let's say the farmer gets $380 a ton for that bread, which then has the capacity to make around 18,000 loaves of bread. So from $400 a ton to, let's say, $5 a loaf. You can see what's happened to the value of that ton of wheat. Somebody has exploited it very nicely, but the farmer doesn't have the capacity unless they're with Oricop, of course, and organic, and we pay them. They make their price and we pay them 35% on harvest. But generally speaking, general grain growers do not have that option. So where is the value? Who's controlling those middle bits? We hear about the middlemen. Well, they want stuff as cheap as possible. It's not about making sure it's a high quality and a high value and a highly nutritious product at the end. And there's a technical term for some of this, and it's called cheap shit.
And I agree with you. And that's, I think, what makes the world go round. It certainly does at the moment. Michael, can you tell me about Growers Hub, please?
Yeah, I can. So it was established in, it's based in Wagga in southern New South Wales, and it was established in back end of last year, sort of October, November. And there's been a farmers market in Wagga for, a long period of time, about 20 odd years. And Pennie was heavily involved with one there a few years ago. And there was a group of producers that got together and basically decided, one particular person sort of spearheaded it, Zoe Lamont, in terms of basically wanting to create a local supermarket, really. And I suppose it got to the stage where no one person had the desire or ambition, capacity to be able to do it themselves. But when we got sort of 7 or 8 growers together, and then we've now got about 15 or 20 sort of coming in, we've all been able to work together to create a space. So we've basically got a 6 day a week supermarket now with all your fresh fruit and vegetables, meat, dairy, ready meals, honey, drinks, a bit of chocolate, stuff like that, florists, a few other things there. And so that's now working. And most of the produce is, genuinely, or, local produce, which is really great. It's just about sort of the community coming together and providing the opportunity for the local people in Wagga to come and shop at a local supermarket. It's worked out really well. It's a co-op. We're renting a building as a commercial premises. And it's been going really well. Only about a month ago, it started going to 6 days a week.
And it's what Pennie was talking about on our last conversation, that instead of being open for one day or one morning, if you can keep it open, for those at least 6 days, you'll start to fit in also with people's schedules. Pennie, tell me about the Organic Regenerative Investment Cooperative. It's very easy for you to say.
Oricop. Say it like Oricop, yeah. And it's a cooperative made up of many, many, many organic grain growers. And we get a lot of people saying, "Oh, you can't grow grain organically and it you won't make any money with it. Well, as a matter of fact, our grain growers do make good money because they set the price and get paid percentage of their harvest when it's in the bin. So we are here to help them value add. So instead of the grain, the primary produce going out to somewhere else, we in the co-op, that's our role, is to add value to these raw products. And we do that in a couple of ways. The first element has been to use the organic grains to transform them into organic poultry pellets. And tons of this stuff are sold every month. The biggest shipment goes to Tasmania every month, 26 tonnes this month. So it's sold in convenient 1 tonne bulker bags for the chook growers, the chook with eggs. But now we're branching out in another form of value adding, which is packaging. So not everybody can handle a bulker bag, a tonne. So we are working with another mill, certified organic mill, to decant these pellets into 25 kilo, 20 kilo, 10 kilo bags. So then it means they're available for the retailers and for consumers to buy directly. That's just, even the packaging is a form of value adding. So we do that for our members. And then we have lots of human grade grains and pulses. And so once again, packaging into those smaller dimensions makes them more available for customers and also bakeries. So we have an inquiry from Far North Queensland for organic wheat and rye, so they can use it in their bakery, their bespoke bakery. And this is not unusual. So now we're starting to get these inquiries rocking in. And we're doing the value adding on behalf of our members.
It seems like there is change in the wind, and I think maybe because of the current, I suppose, fuel fertilizer crisis in the Middle East, that has got something to I would imagine, to get everybody to get up on their horse and do something. But I've got to ask you this, Michael. I mean, at my shopping centre, which I don't go to much because the wife does it for me, she's a good dear, isn't she? But there's a fruit and veggie greengrocer there, and he has some nice fruit and veggies. Another one down the hallway near Woolies. He's a Chinese one, but yeah, same sort of thing. What's the difference with these than what you have at the moment with your hub?
Probably not a lot, to a certain extent. Like a lot of the fruit and veg that we supplying, there's a fruit and veg, a couple of different people doing fruit and veg at the hub. And the difficulty with the fruit and veg is that the consumer, Coles and Woolies did a really great job of training someone to want to be able to buy an avocado or a banana every day of the week or every month of the year. And the reality is they're seasonal products, and they're not necessarily available every day of the week or week of the year. So, and this sort of convenience that people want, they want to be able to buy stone fruit out of season and whatever. I think we need to ideally say, well, look, let's just buy what's in season. You can extend the fringes of the season with a hothouse, a few different things here and there, but you shouldn't be able to get a banana every week of the year or an avocado every week of the year. It's just not realistic. Some of the leafy greens and that, you can manipulate things. There's a bit of technology around to be able to do that. For me personally, the adage I like to think is, has that plant been grown in soil? Like if it's a hydroponic setup, it's food, but it's not really. You really don't want to be putting into your body. If it's been grown in soil, then it's actually, it's a live plant. Once you start understanding the complexities of soil biology and all the phytochemicals that happen in the communication going on between the plant and the soil, like there's a lot that happens in that space that we don't. I get really worried if you're trying to grow something in a hydroponic medium or a glasshouse medium. What are you really missing out on? You might be able to produce something that looks good. You've got a reasonable shelf life, but is it actually going to provide you with the nutrition that your body needs for that period of time? So I see, for me, the order of priority, getting back to answering your question, would be, number one would be grow it yourself. Number two is know the person who grew it. Number three is, it's a local business that's going to be providing local jobs into that community, and they're producing locally, or at least as much as they can locally and seasonally. And then, number four is you couldn't care less where it's coming from, type of thing. So that priority is, and I think, if the more that people, even if it's a bit of basil, a bit of mint or something like that, is if you can grow something, you get an appreciation for what's going on and what you're putting in your body. That can then flow on to the other choices that you make as a consumer.
Just one thing, Michael. Have you noticed a change for the better or the worse? I mean, you look like you're in your 30s. Sorry, I'm being very nice there. But go back to when you were a kid. If I go back to when I was a kid, the supermarkets, they were just, it was almost jumping out at you, the fresh fruit and veg, and maybe because I grew up in Mildura. But it just felt alive. And if you go in, and Pennie and I talked about this last time, if you go into a supermarket, I was talking about the organic fruit and veggies, they look very sad. And yet the other ones, they looked all right, not great. And then when I went to the Ferry Road Market, it was just this colour. It was just amazing. But that reminded me of the olden days. Has it changed a lot in your opinion, or am I just imagining this?
Oh, I think it has, and I think quality, taste, is a big proxy for nutrition. At the moment there's sort of talk in this space around, we need nutrient density testing and that type of stuff. I think your mouth and your nose is some of the best technology that we've got in terms of is something nutritious, and if it's nutritious, it'll be tasty to you. With smoke and mirrors that can be used with that sort of salt and sugar in that, we can sort of trick our body into it. But ultimately, if it looks good and it tastes good, well, then it probably is good for you. So I think using that as a proxy, I think it'd be great if we can go down that path of actually having a nutrient density testing on, all the product, fresh fruit and vegetables, meat, all that stuff. I think that'd be really great. The reality is, I think there's going to be some really big headwinds in that space to allow that to happen. It's hard enough to get something declared that it's actually even made in Australia, let alone that it's, not made in Australia and it's pretty poor quality. So I think it's going to be a really big pushback in the supermarket space to do some of that testing. For us, we're kind of going to be quite proactive in that space, and we're sort of making attempts now to, test our meat to show and prove the quality of it. It already tastes really good. We sort of know that, and our customers tell that every week. But yeah, to actually get that next step of, 200 grams of this meat will be the equivalent of 300 grams of something else. That'd be really great. We're not quite there yet.
I totally agree with you. Pennie, where to now? How do we bring about change?
One of the things we're doing at Oricob is starting a campaign on food literacy. And it's sadly missing because it's something that Mike mentioned before with the tomatoes, this substantial equivalence, which is a term used by the genetically modified organism lobby. Well, it looks the same. We've got 2 tomatoes here. They're substantially equivalent. However, one has been genetically modified with some outside species, DNA, and the other has been grown in soil. So food literacy is about understanding what the different, and I laugh because there is so much bamboozling around the food technology space. And yesterday I discovered that there are 60 names for sugar added in manufactured foods in Australia. Well, I could think of 5, but there are all these chemical put-togethers and that is basically to fool consumers that there's not that much sugar because it's a different name. If it would all had to be labelled as sugar in Heinz's tomato ketchup, which actually contains 95% sugar in various forms, people might be a little bit circumspect about saying, oh, perhaps I won't have that. That's more than the sugar I would have thought is a good thing to consume in a day. But because this food labelling rort, and it is a rort, there's fraud, absolute fraud in all this. Consumers are fooled. So that's why we want to start a course or a campaign in food literacy. And once people can make an informed decision about what they're going to put in their mouth, then things will change. They will be far more analytical and critical about what is being shown on a label. And we have so many examples of fraud in this space that they will say, perhaps I will just go to the farmer's market and I'll get a raw product. I'll be cooking from scratch rather than using these highly ultra processed manufactured crap. It's not food, it's crap.
And I get also I don't get it. I understand that convenience, and that's why Michael with the Growers Hub, because you're open 6 days a week, it's fantastic. And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm looking at here. You got Thursday, Friday till 6, Saturday in the morning. Stunning. And what you're doing is you're actually fitting in with people's lifestyle. Because if you look at when I'm on the Gold Coast, a place where big lips roam free, Botox and beaches, but it's a beautiful part of the world. We've got some intelligence here too. I've been told I have to do that, otherwise I do get a slapping later on. But the convenience of going to a supermarket, it's just so easy. You just hop in the car and you go there, you take a mortgage out, you walk out and you got yourself some food. We have to probably, I would think, and this is just me, I think probably need to start educating from the very grassroots back to schools. Bring in the good food eating, whatever they call it, and start saying you don't have to go to a supermarket, because what supermarkets are doing, whether it's Coles, Woolies, IGA, they advertise, and you keep doing that and doing it and doing it. People just fall into that trap of going to Coles, IGA, the supermarket, and Woolies. So we have to, I would think, educate people right at the very grassroots. And at the other part is we need to make sure that the perception of you got to pay an arm and a leg for that thing because it's from an independent growers hub or something. We have to also educate people that it's not going to be that expensive, and it is better. And as Michael mentioned, instead of having 300 grams of meat, whatever it is, have 200 and have some veggies and stuff. Better food, you're going to be healthier and probably lose a bit of weight if you need to too. What do you think about that, Penny?
Oh, that's the message that's part of why we're doing food literacy. Exactly that. So the big challenge is, where do you start? And we're thinking about educating people to look at labels. And then once you look at them and you unscramble your eyes because of what you're reading on them, numbers and words that your grandmother couldn't pronounce and things you don't have in your own kitchen, then once people start analysing, well, what does this mean? What does that mean? Why are there so many numbers? Are they preservatives? Are they other forms of sugar? Are they flavour enhancers? Are they artificial colours? So these are the nuances we want to help people unfathom so they can make an informed decision and understand. And so part of this is going with educating people about our miraculous bodies and how easily we can nourish them or starve them or poison them. And that's basically what it boils down to. So food ain't food. My message is that for all Australians to have food security, we need prosperous farmers, not cheap imported shit.
Michael, you deal with a lot of bull. I wanted to use that ages ago, but I thought I'll be serious. But now that I've heard that Penny's used that word, And it's true, though, what Penny says. What do you think?
Yeah, well, it harks back to my initial point around the power of the consumer. Ultimately, I think one thing that the big supermarkets have done is the convenience factor. So as much as it would have been just great to say, oh yeah, come and buy your fruit on a Thursday afternoon. That's not practical. Like the modern lives that we live, you do need to be open at convenient times, and that scary stat around 70% or whatever it is, 80% of people walk into a supermarket not knowing what they're going to be buying for dinner that night. So it gets back to some of that practicality, planning your week out. Like, what do you need to buy if you're coming with a list? Especially in the growers hub, it's really great where some of them might go and buy some chicken, some beef, some lamb, all that. Get their meat for the week, some bacon, and then get some fruit and veg and whatever. We're always trying to work in with the other vendors of what goes well with what. One of the stores I'm in is next door to a guy who grows some really high quality mushrooms, and so we always bounce off each other quite well because my mushrooms, my meat would go quite well with his mushrooms and vice versa. So it's about sharing that, and on the Thursdays especially, you get to come in and meet the grower. So that's certainly something you can't do at the local greengrocer or the Coles and Woolies. So getting that interaction, I enjoy that. I'm glad I'm not in there the whole time, I must admit, but certainly on Thursday afternoons, I enjoy being in there, getting to meet the customers, and conversely, they love being able to meet me and knowing where how our meat's produced and where it's coming from, and that it's genuinely local. I think also, like, the vision for what we're trying to do here in Wagga, we don't want it to be exclusive to Wagga. Like, ultimately, it'd be great if, every 150 Ks, there was another one of these hubs and, another group of farmers that sell their produce locally, and you just, every couple of 100 Ks, there's a little spot around, so that you're not having to worry about these, shipping food big miles, using lots of resources, fuel and the like to do that. If everyone was really local, not a lot of online stuff, like, if you want to buy meat from me, you've got to come in and buy it in this local shop, then that gets you in there and, exposed to some of the other producers that are in there as well. So it's genuinely going back to that local food network. And, you look about that from a resource perspective, from a nutrition perspective, like a fertiliser perspective, we need to try and close the loop on, in an ideal world, like, the waste facility in Wagga needs to get that phosphorus and back out onto those paddocks where their produce came from. If you're in a completely removed system like we are now, we've got all these big cities, a lot of our phosphorus is ending up out in Sydney Harbour or down at Werribee sewage treatment plant, all this stuff, and we're not really closing the loop from a nutritional perspective, where this local food network's actually got the capacity to be able to do some of that. We need to be really mindful of that.
I totally agree with you. And I go back a few years now. I haven't had time, and again, with everybody's in the same basket. Time poor, or are we? I mean, because we used to have dinner parties, and I used to love cooking. Sometimes it was okay, other times it was a disaster, but the wine was always great. I think, TV, internet. Mainly, I suppose, internet, TV, and other things like that, sort of taken away the interaction between humans, and the cooking and the food together, and the sitting around and chatting and talking. Now and I'm guilty, having it in front of a TV, just wolfing it down, not really caring what's in it, because you're glued to the TV or to what's online. I think we probably need a change of direction on what we're doing on this planet, because take away all the other stuff. As you said before, Michael, you can only do what you can do for yourself, and one of those things is looking after the body. I think you made reference before, Penny, this magnificent body or something. You're talking about bodies. Well, I've never been referred to in that way, but I'm working on it. But I do think that we are in a spot of bother. I think humanity is just sort of morphing into something else. I don't know what it is. What do you think, Penny, as we wrap this up?
When I say miraculous bodies, I think of the every second miracles that happen without us even thinking. I don't have to remember to breathe. I don't have to remember to blink my eyes. I don't have to remember to keep my heart beating. All these autonomic nervous system actions within our bodies happen without us knowing. If one of them stops, we do know it then. But so we have these every second miracles happening, and that's why we need to treasure our bodies and know what is going to nourish them, not poison them or starve them. So that's, I think, is a really good elemental place to start learning about our bodies and to show them appreciation. But the power of advertising is such that if it's on telly, it must be true. It must be good for you. If it was bad for you, the government wouldn't let it be sold. Well, that's a load of crock, because they're so swayed by the Food and Grocery Council and the Food Safety Australia New Zealand that it's all been realigned to follow the money, to make the money. And that's where we have to use our instincts. Remember what it was like. I remember dinner parties. I love them, and I still have them. And it's about having friends here, and we talk about food. Food culture to me is talking about the food. And we had this conversation the other day with a neighbour who is really good at incubating all sorts of eggs. So we were talking about different varieties of silkies and different varieties of guinea fowl and different varieties of chooks. And she can get them all and she incubates them. So we're talking about, this is food security. This is real food security. And we've done a collective buy between a few of us to get some organic seedlings. So we've did this together. We cooperated and get one big order and share the freight. That's what we're doing. This is our food culture. And it's when we talk about it, and we do get very passionate. I know the Italians and the Hungarians and the French are really good examples of what is their food culture. They love it. They talk about it all the time. Well, around here where I live, we do that too. So how can we inspire more people to do it?
Yeah, that's probably the next conversation we should have, because how do we inspire people? But I think the thought of falling off the perch earlier than you should be some inspiration to you to eat better. And also, if you look at, I've been talking about beef barbecues. I mean, that used to be the staple diet of Australians, barbecue. And I still do. I walk past Bunnings and my tongue hangs out and I can, nothing like it. But a barbecue, I mean, they don't seem to be that popular anymore. But I think, Michael, when you grew up, backyard, you have a barbecue. It's just so easy. And now it's that, that, what I call it, the hairdryer, the air fryer, that's what it's called. The hair dryer. But it's taken over from the barbecue, and it's probably healthy, but it doesn't bring you together as a human species, because you throw it in there, push the drawer. My wife does this, by the way. I just push the thing, and you forget about it. So I think we need to probably have a discussion on how to become a little more, not Australian, but just humans.
Mike, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
You visit Wagga and the Growers Hub, because the barbecue there will revive your memories and tantalize your taste buds.
I won't leave it.
So often it's Michael's beautiful beef on the barbie, and people come for that alone because it's so good. We've got free-range bacon, pastured eggs. So the egg and bacon rolls are legend, and local baker making the rolls. So everything has provenance. You can say, well, that came from here, and then throw a few of the gourmet mushrooms in as well. It's a revelation to your taste buds. And then you sit down with that and have a coffee from the little barista, and you're in this beautiful community of people who are equally as passionate about the food as you are. And they make it a priority to shop there. And there's something magic in the air, I'm quite sure.
Yeah, I agree. Michael, the all-important question, because you are a man who knows his meat, knows his beef and a barbecue. What sort of wine should you have with your beef?
Yeah, good wine is important, I suppose. I don't drink a lot myself, I must admit. But I do love a glass of red with a nice meal. And actually, the other day I had the privilege of we were down at Robinvale, and there's
Oh,
a
yeah.
beautiful winery down there, the Robinvale Biodynamic Winery, and I had a really great Cab Sav from there. It was like a probably 2015 or 16. It was quite good value, but it was absolutely delicious. And you know the thing about this was some of our own homegrown meat that we'd cooked on the open coal barbecue, with drinking some wine with a beautiful group of people I just spent a week with, and without romanticising it, but that's what it's about. Like it's about good quality food, good wine, good company. That's the type of experience we try and create at the Growers Hub. It's more than it's an experience that you come down, you get to meet the growers. There's usually some other friends there. It's an experience. It's an outing, and there's usually a fair few kids running around, that type of stuff. And so that's what it's about. It's about creating that community. That's what we can do. That's what our sort of competition can't. So we need to draw on those strengths like that. But yeah, certainly it is. It goes hand in hand.
It does indeed, and I would imagine there would have been a few Italians amongst those people with the red wine and the barbecue, because that's what we used to have. I mean, we were surrounded by, we're like in Little Italy in Mildura or Silesia, and we had all the 20-acre blocks or 23-acre blocks around us, and on a Sunday after church, you'd smell the bread in the oven, the outdoor oven, and then you'd have lunch with them all. There'd be all the families there. My first time of drinking grappa. My only time grappa was when I was 15. I was 15. My dad was a cop, by the way. Good on you. But then, and it was like, man, oh man, it was never again. Look, we do have to wind it up. I have had a magnificent time. I appreciate both of you from your knowledge and your encouragement for us to start to enjoy life and enjoy food. Get back to the basics. And I would like to do this again, if you don't mind, and we'll have one other person with us, and we can talk about it and talk about food and how good it is, not just for your bodies, but for your psyche and for the community and for Australia. Pennie, if somebody wants to find out more about what you do, how do they do that?
I have an email, which is orca@organicinvestmentcooperative.com.au.
Thank you so much. And Michael, how do they find out more about the Growers Hub and Willowee and suggestions on where they can get some of the plonk you had in Robinvale?
Yeah, well, I suppose I wouldn't say I'm illiterate on social media, but I'm not a big fan of it. But yeah, there's certainly an Instagram and Facebook page with the Growers Hub. I'm not 100% certain of the address, but you'll find it there somewhere. And we do have our own website and that, but that's by the by. Yeah, I mean, the best thing you do is come down and have a conversation. That's where it happens.
Absolutely.
And conversely, go down to your local butcher or your local greengrocer there, wherever you are, and have the same conversation. Walk into the butcher and ask them, where is their meat coming from? Are they doing whole bodies or aren't they, or where do they get it from? If they draw a blank, well then they might be saying, well, that's a good question. Where do we get it from? And then just a bit more accountability like that.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. We can do more of this. We'll have some more graphics up and stuff like that. And maybe we take some calls. We might get that working there. That'll get Jen going. Get those phones working. Pennie and Michael, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to our audience. This is our first of many panels. As I said, we will do this eventually every night, talk about issues that concern people on the land, concern people in regional areas, rural areas and the outback, and start talking about what makes this country tick. Thank you so much for your time. This is the show, by the way. It's called Forum, and this is the Country Telegraph. Have a good one.